In this week's parasha, Parashat B'Shalach, the Torah tells us of the great miracle, the climax of the Exodus, which is the splitting of the Red Sea. The phrase says, "Vayibaku hamayim," that the waters split. It doesn't say the sea split. Vayibaka hayam, it says Vayibaku hamayim. And because of this particular idiom, the sages learn Kol hamayim sheba'olam, that all of the waters in the world were split, not just the Red Sea per se. Let's try to understand this in pure chemical or physical terminology. Water is H2O. To split water means to split the molecule. Water is a molecule. Molecule is composed of different basic elements. Here it's H2O, 2 hydrogen atoms plus 1 oxygen atom is water. The atomic number of water is 10 because hydrogen is 1, so 2 times 1 is 2, and oxygen is 8. So altogether it's 10. Actually, in the very phrase "Vayibaku hamayim," that the waters split, the phrase from which the sages learned that all of the waters in the world split apart, there are 10 letters. And when the phrase itself is calculated in a certain numerical calculation, which is called mispar siduri, ordinal numbering, the phrase itself equals 100 exactly, "Vayibaku hamayim," meaning that the average value of each letter is 10. There are 10 letters, and it equals 100, which is 10 times 10, meaning the average value is 10. To split water, the simple understanding of splitting water into its hydrogen component, which is H2, and its oxygen component, which is O, 8. The allusion in the Torah to splitting 10 into 2 and 8 appears very, very strongly in the following parasha that we'll read next week, Parashat Yitro, that there are 10 commandments. It says the first 2 commandments we heard directly from the voice, from the mouth of God. Whereas the 8 commandments, afterwards we heard from Moses, from Moshe Rabbeinu. So we see very clearly that in the 10 commandments, the 10 divides into 2 and 8. It's just like a water molecule that divides into 2 and 8. Where do we find this in nature itself? Where does it take place? It takes place as one of the very, very beautiful phenomena in the photosynthesis process. That light photons, this is one of the reactions that takes place during photosynthesis. It's called photolysis. That a light photon actually results in splitting the water molecules in the plant into the hydrogen part and the oxygen which is released to the air that we breathe. So we can say that the concept of splitting all of the waters in the world simultaneously to the splitting of the Red Sea is a very beautiful reference to this phenomenon which is called photolysis. There are other ways to split 10. 10 can be split into 1 and 9, it can be split into 3 and 7, into 4 and 6, or 5 and 5. In the Torah we find all possible splittings of 10. For instance, in the 10 sayings of creation, the 10 are split into 1 and 9, because the first one, Breshit, which is also a saying, is an implicit saying. So there's one implicit saying that everything was created ex nihilo. All of the other 9 explicit sayings of the 10 are not creation, according to Rashi, not creation ex nihilo, but just formation from something to something, changing of form, or taking some amorphous matter and giving it form. So actually the 10 sayings split into 1 and 9. The 10 commandments, in the way that we just saw, split into H2 versus O, because the Torah is likened to water, and water splits into 2 and 8. The 10 plagues split into 7 and 3, because in the first parasha of Ve'ero, there are 7 plagues. And then there are 3 plagues. In Kabbalah, in general, 10 splits into 7 and 3, because 7 are the emotions of the heart, and 3 are the intellectual faculties. So the 10 powers of the soul in general split into 3 and 7. The letter, which is 10 in Hebrew, is the letter Yud, the first letter of Hashem's name. When it is written in full, it is written Yud, Vav, Dalet. And the 2 letters that fill the original letter are Vav and Dalet, which equal 6 and 4, alluding to the fact that the 10 itself splits into 6 and 4. 6 are relatively male powers of the 10, of the initial 10, and 4 are the relatively female powers of the 10. So sometimes 10 splits into 6 and 4, even in this very phrase itself, hamayim, that has 10 letters, and the average value of the 10 letters is 10, the splitting of the 2 words is into 6 letters. Vayibaku, the first word, and its split has 6 letters to it, and hamayim, the water, has 4 letters to it. 5 and 5 is as it begins in the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, says that the 10 Sfirot are just like the fingers of the 2 hands. 5 versus 5. It's like the 2 tablets. It's also in relation to the 10 Commandments that we're going to read about next week in the Torah. So the 10 Commandments were engraved upon 2 tablets of the covenant, and each tablet had 5 and 5. So actually in the 10 Commandments there are 2 divisions of 10, either into 2 and 8, which are the 2 first commandments that we heard directly from God, and the 8 following commandments that we heard from Moshe, or the way they were engraved on the tablets, the 2 tablets of the covenant, which is 5 and 5. We see that in the Torah there are all possibilities of splitting the water, or splitting the 10 into 2 parts. And the photon, like in this process of photolysis, that it's the photon that enters and creates or results, affects this splitting. That photon is like the children of Israel entering b'toch hayam, bayabasha, entering into the water. Because it says, Or Yisrael, Israel is a light. So that photon of light, that's what enters the water molecule and splits it into 2. Let's give one final example of how the Yud, the letter Yud, also splits into Hey and Hey. The first matriarch of our people, Sarah, her name originally was Sarai. She had a Yud at the end of the name. But in order for herself and her husband Abraham to merit to bear Yitzchak, a child, her Yud, which was also her drop of water at the end of her name, had to split into 5 and 5. And 1 5, 1 Hey was given to her husband Abraham, who previously was called Avram, and now he's Avraham. And the other Hey, the other 5, remained in her name. So there's one more very beautiful, important example of the 10 splitting, of the water splitting into 2. So, as we explained before, the water first has to split in order to manifest all of the beauty of its potential, of its infinite potential. And the very photon of light, which is the soul of Israel that enters to affect the split, also affects ultimately the unification of the two dimensions of the water. And then water is all one mayim, as we said before, that it's a word that is actually, it's one, but it's in the plural, meaning that one is all and all is one, God is all is one, all is God.
שוב אתה חולם על השיעורים של הרב גינסבורג?
אני לא חולם, אני אני מתבונן.
מה ההבדל בין לחלום להתבונן?
לחלום זה שאתה חולם בלי שכל. אתה מדמיין. אבל להתבונן זה שאתה עם שכל. איזה דף?
ו' עמוד א'. תן רבנן, הרי את אשתי הרי את רציתי הרי את כולה למקודשת. הרי את שלי הרי את דושתי הרי את כולה למקודשת. הנה כולו כחדתנה, תלת שמנו וגרתנו. באיה לאום, יוחדת לי מהו, מיועדת לי מהו